Good morning, bonjour, guten Morgen. Languages. Languages are part of our social fabric, they're part of our cultural heritage, they're part of what makes us European. They can also, unfortunately, present gaps, and especially in the EU, this is particularly important because we have 26 official languages, we have 2 CEF-affiliated languages, and what this project, the ELRC project, is about is to try to use language technologies to help bridge some of those gaps. The EU has undertaken a program called CEF, the Connecting Europe Facility, and it's under this umbrella that we're trying to provide language technologies to help bridge language gaps. So welcome to the second day of the conference. Yesterday we had a look at some of the new technologies. Today we're going to go into the second day of the program, and I'm just going to review a little bit of the context again for our colleagues that could not join us yesterday. There are quite a few colleagues that could only join us today, so please bear with me. So what is the goal of the ELRC? It's to help provide language resources for language technologies that help us to address the language gaps or the language barriers. These language resources are usually for machine translation. Machine translation is one important tool in the toolkit of language technologies for overcoming language gaps. And these machine translation systems are usually based on machine learning. Machine learning needs data. So to get the best result in machine learning, we need a lot of data and we need the right kind of data. And under CEF, under the Connecting Europe Facility, the idea is to first address the needs of public services. We have public services in all of our member states and, of course, our CEF-affiliated countries. And, of course, these public services are faced increasingly with multilingual issues. They have to deal with many of the European languages. And this will be good in order to support mobility, interaction, the flow of ideas, people, work, jobs across Europe. So how do we do this? Well, first of all, we engage with the public services. We identify what their needs are when it comes to dealing in a multilingual environment. We work with them together to collect language resources, because in order to produce machine translation systems that are really, really well suited to the public services across Europe, we need the data that is suitable for them. Just to give you sort of like a very simple example, if you train a machine translation system on Harry Potter, it will be very good at translating magic spells. If you use that same machine translation system that is trained on Harry Potter to translate weather reports, the result is going to be mixed. The other way around, if you train a machine translation system on weather reports and you want to translate magic spells, not so good, but it's going to be very good on weather reports. And that's what we're focusing here, and that's where we're working with our national anchor points who are part of the ELRC project in all of the EC member states and in the CEF-affiliated countries, and with our public service colleagues to get the right kind of data to produce the right kind of machine translation for the public services across Europe. And we help them, because even if you have the data somewhere in the public services, it's not always easy to translate this data into something that's usable in machine translation. First of all, there might be legal issues. There might be intellectual property rights that need to be clarified and cleared. And we help you with that. We have a legal team within ELRC, and we have legal experts who will assist you in dealing with, for example, IP rights and legal rights and help clearing them. There are also technical issues. You might have really wonderful data, but it's in the wrong format. It has tags all over the place that should not be there. It might have reference to individuals, so it's not anonymous data. So we can provide you with support, with tools that do automatic anonymization to make that data available and shareable. And then, of course, also, especially with our Language Resource Advisory Board, or LRB, we are an observatory for language resources across Europe. So what have we achieved so far, and what's available? We have the ELRC repository. You can see data there, you can upload data, you can already download data there. We have the technical and legal help desk that I mentioned earlier on that provides support for you in identifying data and clearing legal issues related with the data. And of course we have these services such as anonymization, format conversion, tag removal, and so on. In addition to that, we run the ELRC workshops. across all of Europe and CEF-affiliated countries. So we're running 30 workshops altogether. We already did 30 workshops last year and the year before. ELRC is now in its third year. And we have a new focus. So in addition to carrying the message out into Europe and the public services to make their data available, to share their data across Europe, to pool that data for the benefit of everybody, the idea is now, in addition to awareness raising, to go beyond the tip of the iceberg of the data that we're able to collect in the first round of ELRC. You all know that an iceberg has about 10% above the water and about 90% below the water, and we want to get at that 90% below the water. And we also want to have a strong focus on the right kind of data and quality data, because for machine translation, for anything to do with machine learning, it's basically an instance of the old garbage in, garbage out principle. If we feed bad data into a machine learning system, it will learn bad things. If we feed good data in the machine learning system, the chance that the translation system is going to learn to translate well are much, much, much better. Oh, I should mention, in addition to that, the second focus of the new phase, the current phase of ELRC, is also to start thinking about making this data supply network across Europe sustainable. And by sustainable, here I mean it should not stop with the end of the ELRC and the CEF project. You know, ELRC, I think the second round is going to run until the end of 2019, and we want to make this sustainable. We want to make these networks continue. And in order to do that, we would like to anchor these networks even more strongly in the member states. And we're doing that with our national anchor points, our technology anchor points, and our public service anchor points. There are no ready-made solutions for this, because all the European countries are very, very different. They have different objectives, different ideas, different backgrounds, different base situations where they're starting. So what we're going to do today in the afternoon is present you with some ideas about how this can be done, some best practice examples. So, for example, from Finland, where translation and the management of data is coordinated by, I think, the Prime Minister's office. We'll give you some other examples from the Baltic countries. I think also from Spain there are good models being developed. And the idea here is to seed in your minds a landscape of ideas, how you could, in your country, contribute towards making that data pipeline sustainable, and help you find the best solution for your country. Of course, the pipeline goes in both directions. We supply data to the EC. The data is being shared. A lot of data is publicly available. You can use it, you can download it for your own translation memories, etc. And by pooling, you can get better systems, because there might be, for example, French-Spanish data from our French colleagues and Spanish-French data from our Spanish colleagues. And if you put those two together, you have much, much more data for machine translation between Spanish and French than individually. That's how you can profit from sharing. And that's a real, real benefit. And these benefits are instantiated in terms of the e-translation system that's going to be launched in a couple of days by the EC. It's kind of like the successor to the translation at DGT. And you will see some of these data, some of the data from the first 2 years of ELRC already being used in those systems. So an example for that, I think, is the English-Norwegian machine translation system that relies heavily on the data that was provided by our Norwegian colleagues, by our Norwegian technology NAPs and public service NAPs. And this is happening more and more and more. Okay, I already mentioned the ELRC Language Resource Board. And of course the ELRC conference. We have an annual ELRC conference. You are at this conference. You are at the second day of the conference. And I'll very, very briefly, after the next slide, run you through the program that we have in stock for you today. In terms of a slogan, what we would like to encourage everybody to work towards and to contribute towards is to identify data in your countries together with your public services, to share those data, to make them publicly available, to make them available to the EC for the benefit of everybody. And our colleagues at the EC under the CEF program will provide machine translation systems that are based on these data and that are geared towards the needs of the public services in your countries, and of course also for the DSIs within the CEF program. And then doing that identification, that provision of data, that sharing of data, we can all benefit from the data. I think in the old days, the first 2 years of ELRC, our slogan was supporting our languages is supporting Europe, and supporting Europe is supporting our languages. And that's really a win-win situation, and it's a very, very rare situation, because most situations are not win-win. But by sharing, we can all win, and we can come to a next stage. And as I said, we really want to start thinking, without having ready-made solutions, we want to start thinking how to make these pipelines in both directions sustainable beyond the lifetime of our current programs and projects. So let me just briefly introduce today's program. So first, we're going to concentrate on the multilingual needs of public services in Europe. And there we are going to focus on e-justice, on e-procurement, and very importantly, the European Refugee Information and Communication Service, ERICS. After that, we have a block on effective high-quality translations, in particular new technologies that are available for human translators. Some of them you've seen yesterday in the demonstrations here. And this includes insights into translation quality, neural machine translation, language resources, and also contains an important contribution on machine translation provided by our Irish colleagues for the Irish government. That's a really good example of how translation can support public services, and in this case an entire government. You know that in Irish, Gaelic is one of the 2 languages in the country. It's in fact the official language, and there's a machine translation system that helps the government to translate resources from Gaelic into English, but also into Gaelic in particular. And we'll have that flanked by a panel on how we can possibly ensure to achieve maximal translation quality. And then in the afternoon, after lunch, we start thinking about best practices and best models for sharing data, making it available for mutual benefit. And also we start thinking about how we can develop ideas, how can we develop a landscape for making these efforts sustainable and consist beyond the lifetime of the current project. And then at the end, we'll summarize, we'll have a panel, and conclude the day with another cocktail reception to which I invite you all. And I think with that, we can start the program for today. Thank you very much.